It's important to acknowledge that we are now potentially only a few months away from seeing the Islam Party as a political party in the UK. Now, of course, many people have been warning about this for a long time and have been completely ridiculed. There are already examples of the Islam Party in existence in Belgium, for example, specifically Molenbeek, where I've spent quite a lot of time. Molenbeek is called the jihadi capital of Europe for good reasons. There are about 24 mosques, I think, in a 5 kilometre square area. I mean, it's out of control. But let's just go through the stages and why it is that we know for certain the Islam Party is about to be upon us. So if we take it right back, Muslims typically vote Labour. So 85%-ish of the total vote that Muslims give goes to the Labour Party. And that has increasingly become a source of frustration for Muslims who don't really want to belong to Labour, certainly don't agree with its policies on many things, certainly would like it to be a much more true representation of Islam and not economic policies, for example, or social policies, but just according to religion. And that frustration has been building, as many of us have pointed out, for about 20 years or so. The second thing is that a Muslim population, some generalisation here clearly, votes according to race and religion. So it isn't about economic policies or social policies or politics in and of itself. It's about race and religion and loyalty to religion above all. The next thing that you will hear thrown back at you, and I've had this for a couple of decades when I've been called everything under the sun, is, yes, Katie, quick search on Wikipedia, but Muslims are only X% of the UK population. So you'll always hear that as a return argument. It's very lazy, it's very weak, it shows no understanding of being on the ground, and it certainly doesn't represent people like myself who've spent time in Tower Hamlets, for example. But this idea, there's only X% Muslim population total in the UK. One, it's a complete fallacy. No one knows how many people are in this country. I would argue there's 20 million more people in this country than are counted. We aren't going to have the census anymore because it's too expensive, and actually the results of the census are things that most British people wouldn't want to hear, and nobody has any idea of the invisible population in the UK, which is why if you were on the ground, as I was when Grenfell burnt down, the locals who lived there knew that there was another 100 or so people missing on that day because they knew some of the true numbers of who was actually in that building. But of course, invisible people don't die. Regardless, if you take the Muslim population that actually exists in the UK and then you squeeze it like this into towns and cities and concentrated areas, that's actually what's happening. That's actually the Muslim population of the UK, which is why if you're a Christian white British person, you're a minority in London, because London, in the 5 boroughs that matter for Sadiq Khan, is majority Muslim. And in other towns and cities that are now majority Muslim, Bradford, Luton, Leicester, the list goes, Bradford goes on and on. I said Bradford twice. There's a reason for that. So it's actually a Muslim majority, and that's why you see Muslim mayors, Muslim councillors. Anywhere you see that, that is giving you good evidence, you don't have to listen to me at all, that Muslim majority areas will vote according to religion. Now, what does that mean? That means that funds, power, decision-making, appointments now sit with that religion. And another specific example, so that it's not my voice, we're just talking about what's actually happening. The guy Luftar Rahman in Tower Hamlets. So he showed perfectly how this works using religious intimidation. I'm taking these notes directly from the court findings. Vote rigging. He has a cabinet made up entirely of Muslim men. And under his watch, because he was elected using religion and religious intimidation and widespread fraud, which was proven because how many brave people was it? Was it four? Four locals challenged his re-election, and only then did he face a reckoning. And even after he was removed from power, he went on to found the Aspire Party, winning the mayoral position once again. And the reason he can keep winning, despite religious intimidation and the vote rigging and whatever else, although those are mechanisms of winning, he's winning because of the Bangladeshi community and the Somali community. And because of what we just spoke about pushing a majority concentrated population into one area who are loyal by race and religion, but religion above all other, he can win. And during his time in power and now, he diverts British taxpayer funds to Bangladeshi and Somali causes. And of course, if you're someone near him or in a position of power, you can allocate funding to causes of your own in Bangladesh or Somali. So voting for him, if you're Somali or Bangladeshi, makes perfect sense. And then if you're close to power, you can get your family appointed and they can continue to make those decisions. And under the watchful gaze of Londoners, you have a Muslim Police Association. There is a Muslim Housing Association. Power, funding, control, the ability to control future elections, future appointments, the Muslim Council, making sure that the Muslim councillors are well placed. Now, the reason you're seeing the tipping point, which is why I'm speaking about this again right now, is it feels only weeks away before what has been put in place structurally for about 2 decades, certainly a decade that I've been noisy about it to the point of being persecuted out of my own country, is all of that is now in place. The scaffolding, the structure, the PowerPoint, Sadiq Khan, up in Scotland, Hamza Yousaf, Muslim Council, fiercely powerful. It's just taken the Israeli-Gaza conflict to tip these councillors over the edge, get them to quit the Labour Party, which 20 councillors in Pendle. So Pendle is between Bradford and Blackburn. I say it like this because I had to look it up. 20 councillors resign en masse. And what do you think those 20 councillors are? Of course, they're all Muslim men and they're all resigning at the same moment because this is a prelude to them, which will already exist. They will already have all of this worked out. The Islam Party, which will present itself and will eventually be accepted by the Electoral Commission or whoever has to approve these things, because this is the way that the UK has been going for the 20 years that a few of us have been screaming about it and persecuted for doing as such. And then you can say, well, Katie, does it matter? So what? There'll be an Islam Party and people who want to vote for Islam and Muslims and people who vote by race and religion can vote for the Muslim Party. Well, yes, except who then represents British interests? Who represents the people who feel like second-class citizens in their own home? And there is already that sense when people are out protesting. We've got Muslim councillors resigning because of what's happening in Gaza, whilst people's bins aren't being collected, or someone's got an issue with their road in their area. Stuff councillors are supposed to care about, kids getting to school places, doctors' surgeries. The stuff councillors are supposed to be involved in, they're not. It's just a massive lobbying effort for the Muslim religion. And then if you extend that further, what some of us have been saying for the longest time, and there is no joy in this, but the lizard has to eat its own tail. So if Labour were always home for people who were free-thinking and inclusive and diverse, LGBTQ, whatever, what do you think happens when the Islam Party become the most powerful party? Because the UK is demographically already a majority Muslim country. The number of births to Muslims outnumber the number of births to all other religions. What do you think happens to LGBT rights? What do you think happens to women and where do you think this ends up? And people say, we have to do something about this now. And I guess that is the frustration, isn't it? if you're going to do something about it, you had to do something about it 20 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, when all of this structural scaffolding that now allows this House of Islam, the political party, to be built, has to happen a long time ago. And that's why I spent 5-8 years on the road in America, warning America not to become as we became, not to fall as we have fallen. And why, when you see places like Dearborn in Michigan, and you're in Minnesota and Minneapolis, and you see exactly the same playbook being rolled out, and many of you watching this will be able to go, same here, same in this city, Montreal, same, Canada, Toronto. I mean, so that's what's happening. That's the structural scaffolding. That's examples of each thing I'm talking about. That's what's about to come out, is the Islam Party approved as a political party in this country, and then voting according to religion is finally acknowledged, as opposed to just happening all the time with the buying of votes and the mosque coordinating the votes and the imam, advising from a religious perspective who people should be voting for. And I say all of that still with hope, which sounds bonkers. Having seen what's happened in places like Molenbeek and other places. But there's always hope, because time is long. And when people speak of the Crusades as something from history, I see them as something that are only just around the corner. And I think it's the reason why Eastern Europe and the strength of Hungary and Poland and Croatia and others is so brilliant in the truest sense of that word, because eventually people will need a place to run to, and Eastern Europe continues to offer that hope for everybody who will be forced out of the UK when this becomes a Muslim country. And all of those things are things that I've been saying for 2 decades, certainly for a decade strongly in mainstream, and therefore had to be ousted. But I continue to say them, maybe in a slightly more measured manner. Regardless, I'll see you very soon on the road.